Hello, you're watching PC Jack. Today, I'm going to show you how to update your BIOS ready for the Ryzen 7 5800X 3D, specifically on the B550i ROG STRIX from ASUS. So because the Ryzen 7 5800X 3D only came out a couple of weeks ago, it does mean that if you are a pre-existing AM4 socket owner, that you will have to do a BIOS update in order to actually install and run that CPU. So, the first thing I would double check is what actual BIOS version you're currently on. If you take a look in the BIOS, you can see in this one, we're currently on BIOS version 1202. So we can take a look when we go on the manufacturer's website to see whether we are up to date. I already know this one's going to be too old, so we are definitely going to have to update though. So what we need to do is go to ASUS's website and download the BIOS version we need in order to actually run the 5800X 3D. A quick way of actually finding this is to go to the CPU support page, and if you scroll down, you'll eventually come across the 5800X 3D. So as you see, we got the 5800X 3D. It's confirmed as supported on this motherboard, and it says here we need BIOS version 2603. Or you can also go to Driver and Tools, BIOS and Firmware, and then you can locate this in the same area over here. So we know this is the one we need, and as you can see, it's got a couple of notes on here. So it's update AMD AM4 Adjacer V2 PI 1.2.0.6b, and also improve system performance and stability. So just so you know, we're not going to be using BIOS flashback. We're going to be doing the traditional way of updating your BIOS via the actual BIOS itself. You would be able to use the BIOS flashback tool in particular, but you would obviously have to make sure you rename the file in order for the motherboard to actually recognize it when it's going through the flashback process. But we're not worrying about BIOS flashback, so we're just going to do it the traditional way. You can save this zip file, and then next we're going to need to extract that zip file. Now I'm just going to extract that to my desktop. So I've got the BIOS update on my desktop, and all we're going to need to do is plug in a USB that's formatted to FAT32, and then we can copy this file over to there ready. And then once that's done, we're just going to jump into the BIOS and actually perform the update itself. So a nice quick way of getting into the BIOS from the desktop is just to hold shift down and then go to restart. So here we go. So if you held shift and then press restart, Windows will bring you to this page where you can go through to troubleshoot, advanced options, UEFI firmware settings, and then restart, and this will enter the BIOS without having to mash delete constantly, which you can do, but this is just a nice quick way when you're already in the desktop. Here we go. So we're back in the BIOS now, and yes, so we see we are still on 1202 for our BIOS version, so we are going to have to update that one to the latest one. And to do so, we're going to go over to Tool, and then go for ASUS Easy Flash Free Utility. And you can see over here that it's picked up the BIOS update that we've got saved on that drive. So we can click enter on that. Now, you will get prompted about this notice on here. So please back up your BitLocker recovery key and suspend BitLocker encryption in the operating system before updating your BIOS. Now, chances are you probably don't have this enabled, but I would advise checking to make sure you don't have any of your drives actually encrypted. Because if you do the BIOS update, you could have some issues with accessing your data. So maybe check before you do the actual update. I already know that BitLocker is disabled on my drive, so this isn't going to be a problem. So we can click yes. Do you want to read this file? Yes. Do you really want to update the BIOS? Yes, we do. And then during this part, you do not touch the system at all or power it down for any reason. If you do power down or lose power, then you can brick your motherboard. So leave it do its thing, and it should take a couple of minutes, but once it's done, it'll boot back up, and we'll be able to see if the BIOS update has been successful. There we go, and we've now had this notification say that the update was successful and that the system will now be reset. So you may find at this point that the system may reboot a couple of times, but just leave it do its thing, and eventually it should take you back into the desktop. There we go, so the update seems to have been successful. It's now prompting us to go back into the BIOS just to recover our previous BIOS settings, so we can just go into that. So, as you can see, we're back in the BIOS now, and we are now on BIOS version 2603, which means the BIOS update was successful. So overall, that update took about 5 minutes, I want to say, and we did have a couple of reboots as the motherboard worked through the update itself. And now that update is complete, you can now actually install your Ryzen 7 5800X 3D. So, that's it for today's video. If you found it useful, then please feel free to like and subscribe for more videos on the way soon. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at PCJack94. If you're also updating the BIOS on the same motherboard as myself, I'll include a link in the video description. If you'd like to talk more with myself and other like-minded hardware enthusiasts, then make sure to check out the PC Jack Discord. If you'd like to support the channel even further though, then make sure to check out the PC Jack Patreon, where you can claim exclusive benefits while helping to fund everything I do on the channel for you guys. You'll find links to all those in the video description. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.